And now I would like to turn it over to Jennifer Nicholson. I think you're on muted.
Haha, see, that's why I ask if you can see and hear me okay.
Yeah.
Because then I can see and hear. So, hi, everybody. Uh, my name is Jennifer Nicholson, and I'm the new Director Connections and Friends and Foundations Consultant at the Division of Library and Information Services. I wanted to give a little bit of background about myself before I jump in. So, I hold a Master of Arts in Library and Information Services from the University of South Florida. And also, I have a second master's degree in worship studies. I also hold a Bachelor of Science in International Affairs with a music minor from Florida State University. So I can safely say go FSU and go USF together. So I actually graduated with my MLIS degree recently from USF in 2023. So it's been about 2 years. And we here at the Division of Library and Information Services, we've been wanting to do more work with engaging future library professionals and those in MLIS programs, especially here in the state of Florida. So if you're not familiar with the Division of Library and Information Services, I encourage you to check us out, first of all, because I know this was sent out to a lot of different types of people in lots of different libraries. At the division, we encompass the State Library of Florida and the State Archives, but we also have a Bureau of Library Development, and that's where I work. And so, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind putting those links to the division and the Bureau of Library Development in the chat, that would be great. Um,
Yeah, I'm having some minor technical difficulties, but I will get those in very soon, I promise.
No worries.
Thank you.
Let me check on this real quick. I can also throw some in real quick here too. There we go. So that's just some background information on us, and I'll get in a little more detail about that in a second. But kind of some of the precedent with this topic for the discussion is that I've heard in the library field, I didn't learn this in library school. You know, lots of different people are in lots of different types of libraries or library related careers. And there's a lot that you don't learn in library school. And that's true, especially if you went to library school a long time ago. Perhaps you ended up choosing a different kind of career path. And I admit, having worked in a library and where I'm even at now, there are certain things you do just learn on the job. But as I talked with colleagues and professionals, we kind of had this idea to share practical examples of how my MLIS education and courses directly inform my everyday work, because I just started seeing a lot of connections, especially over the past year. So recently I transitioned to my new role in Director Connections. So I thought it'd also be a great idea to introduce myself to the Florida library community in this new context and talk about my MLIS experience. So a little bit of background about me and my library journey. I've worked in circulation in a public library. I worked as a director of library services in a small graduate library that was actually a theological library, so it's kind of encompasses that special library aspect. And I've worked here in the division previously in grants. I've worked in nonprofits and music, youth, and arts program planning, but I actually came back to the Division of Library and Information Services in November 2024. And when I came back into that position, I was the Florida Statewide Digital Initiative Consultant. Then in January 2026, so pretty recently, I think I've been in this position about a month now, officially, I could say, I moved within the division to be the Director Connections and Friends and Foundations Consultant. So I want to talk about those two roles and provide a background for a minute because I'll be sharing some practical examples from the courses I took in my degree with those two roles. So first off, the Florida Statewide Digital Initiative, and Rebecca is going to put some links to the digital initiative and the Sunshine State Digital Network in the chat that I'm going to talk about a little bit. And actually, I'm also just going to share my screen here real quick so that you can see the web page for the digital initiative. Give me 1 second. Here we are. Okay, let me see. Can you all see that? Yes, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay, wonderful. So the digital initiative, this is our webpage here for it. It's a collaborative effort to provide infrastructure for digitizing and promoting the use of cultural heritage materials led by Florida libraries, archives, museums, and other cultural heritage organizations. We also partner with the Sunshine State Digital Network. This is out of the Florida State University, to build supportive digital collection partnerships. I've been involved in their work groups and training. I've also been involved in working with a contractor to build a statewide platform in Islandora. Right now, the digital initiative is using that platform internally to create some really exciting digital collections and exhibits for America 250. So keep an eye out for that. In addition, we're actually doing a survey right now. I encourage you all to fill it out. It's called the Florida Statewide Digital Initiative Survey. If you work at an organization that has digital collections, or even if they don't, we're trying to gather some information about what the current digital library landscape looks like right now. It can be an extensive survey if you do have digital collections, so we're not, broadly emailing the link out, but if you're interested, feel free to contact me about that information. I'll put contact information in the chat later about me. But that's a little bit of a background. And so the web page here, you can see it's providing different resources for our Florida libraries about how to, manage a digital project, considering copyright, providing right statements, metadata. There's just a lot that goes into digital libraries. It's basically its own form of library. So I'll stop sharing real quick. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is my current role. So my current role is now the Director of Connections and Friends/Foundations Consultant. And I provide orientation on what the Division of Library and Information Services does. And I give information about library governance for new Florida library directors, such as one-on-one calls. We also have live one-on-one and group virtual discussions. We have an annual in-person division orientation and an annual in-person assembly for public library groups. I also help with our learning management system, and I create trainings and resources for directors. So in both these roles, I work with our other consultants in the Bureau of Library Development to kind of understand the context of different library directors, how to help their staff. And so it's really a collaborative effort with these different programs that I've been involved in. So that kind of gives a little background as I'm going to talk about my courses. So with that context, I wanted to facilitate a discussion where I shared my experience, where I really look at my classes I took during my library degree and think more critically about what I really did take away from my MLIS and how I'm using and expanding on those skills now in my current work. And even though I'm talking about my classes, I think many library schools have similar classes. So I hope if you're attending a different library school right now than USF, you'll still look at your courses, think through what you're learning now. So in the USF MLIS program and in a lot of other library programs I've seen, you have to do a comprehensive exam or a final project. So in my case, I had to create a website portfolio and it shows what we learned during our degree. But often we don't get to share specifically how our degree and classes may have helped us later in our career. And so I hope this will be helpful if you're in a degree program right now, kind of looking at your portfolio, or if you've graduated years ago, or even if you're maybe considering getting your MLIS to kind of reflect on your own journey and your courses that you've taken or are taking. So I just want to clarify, I offer this as one person's perspective and experience, recognizing I know we have a broad range of experiences in the library field. So with that, let me kind of talk about my courses and some of the general information or assignments that I now use in my current work. So I started my degree in fall 2022, and the first class that I took was LIS 5020, Foundations of Library and Information Science. So this is really addresses a lot of foundational library issues, new developments in the library world. We had to look at things like ethics, we had to write papers, different things. I think probably for me is this course was kind of a broad introduction to the library world. I had already previously worked in libraries, but it kind of more honed in on different things. Two of the most helpful aspects about this course for me was there was a section where you actually had to make the case for your library. It was whether you were working in a public library, you could kind of choose if maybe you weren't working in a library, like what type of library you would be talking about. But you really had to explain like your library's story. And so in the field that I'm in now, when I talk with directors or when I talk about the digital collections, we make that information known. We say, this is how this is going to impact our citizens. Um, this is maybe how we're using our resources wisely and our grant funding wisely. So that's one way. In addition, we actually had to kind of look at a library website and provide feedback and information on that. And so, as you can see, I showed you earlier the Florida Statewide Digital Initiative website. And in designing websites specifically for libraries and librarians, that's some helpful information that I got to take away from that class as well. So that's kind of the foundations class I took away from. The next class I had to take was basic information sources and services. So that's kind of the class that's pretty general where you learn about the basis of reference and reference technology. And I think even though some of the technology I might not be using directly in my role right now, I think that us as librarians, we really have to learn a lot of different types of technologies. And so kind of be able to approach that in a little more of a structured setting and also to know where to go to look for those technologies was helpful. In the assignments, I had to use presentation software, which is what I'm doing right now. And so I think a lot of us have had to learn that over the years, especially since the pandemic. So using things like LibGuides and Snagit. Interestingly, we had to do a series of exercises where we answered questions using government websites. Well, as someone who works in government, learning how to navigate those resources on behalf of directors and others is really helpful. So traditional reference is really important, but you can really expand on that. Um, I had to do a screencast assignment where I walked through a resource I created. I do a lot of that now in my current job. The other class I took in fall 2022 was preparing instructional media. Some schools, such as USF, they require a technology elective, and that's what I decided to take for that. So it really expanded my use and was a good kind of pairing with the reference class because it expanded my use of information technology, which resulted in an even greater understanding of tools to communicate information, like using Prezi. And I also did learn how to use SurveyMonkey in that class, which was very helpful for the survey even that we have right now. Then in spring 2023, I took Introduction to Library Administration. So this was really the class where you learned a lot about the structure of libraries, how different kind of library types might be either governed or internally structured. But it also covered things like management, leadership, how to give different proposals and project proposals. So I ended up writing about a paper on leadership. I did work on effective communication and project proposals. I also had to write about practical things such as how departments are organized, how to give feedback to an employee performance review. So even if you're not doing those things now, it helps when you're coming into a new environment or understanding your current library structure. Florida has a lot of different library types, even just within public libraries. So understanding how some of that administration works. We also talked about ethics in government. We have very strict rules on ethics because we recognize that we're here to serve the public and what we can and cannot accept, that type of thing. And so that was a really good primer for working in the public sphere, if anybody's interested in that. I also had to take Organization of Knowledge 1. That was actually with Dr. New, who I see is on this call. So hello. In that role, I was already kind of familiar. I mean, in that class, I was familiar with Mark already due to some roles that I used to do in different work, cataloging and Mark. But this class really introduced me to Dublin Core, BibFrame, FAST, metadata object description schema, lots of different metadata schemas. So I have a greater understanding of cataloging and knowledge organization as a result and how to uh, do that type of thing. This was very helpful with the statewide digital initiative. I ended up helping create our local metadata standards. So I mentioned that we're working on a statewide platform. Islandora runs on a version of MODS, metadata object description schema, but it's not really true MODS, and Islandora has made some tweaks to it. So I had to actually go through, look at every single field, write out our metadata policy. I had to create mapping from that schema that we had to different other schemas, at least three other schemas. So I really had to familiarize myself with all those. The Sunshine State Digital Network, I know, has had to work with libraries with a lot of different types of schemas and cataloging. And so to kind of help all these different digital libraries with interoperability, you have to know these metadata standards. So even if um, you don't really expect to work in cataloging, which I didn't necessarily, you might end up doing a position where that would help you a lot. And I found that to be true for me. I also took cultural heritage institutions and libraries. This informed me of a lot of good collaborations between my library and cultural heritage institutions. It gave me a lot of opportunities for professional and community engagement activities in the field. I explored a lot of different museums, cultural heritage sites. This included things like Florida local history, historical sites, and museums. It really helped me as I dived into my work with the Sunshine State Digital Network. If you were at the Public Library Directors meeting in July 2025, we also had the Florida Veterans History Program come and speak, and they do a lot with oral histories and working with a lot of different organizations, including libraries. Our division at the Division of Library Information Services is actually part of several different divisions. Some of those include arts and culture and historical resources. So I've been kind of able to understand our different partnerships through that too. So Rebecca, if you could put in the chat, we know we have links to Florida Veterans History Program, which we had a previous DLIS discussion on that, so some of you might be familiar. But if you're not, love for you to explore that for your library and how maybe you could partner with them if you're interested. Also, the Division of Arts and Culture and Division of Historical Resources, they're both our sister divisions under the Florida Department of State. Arts and Culture has some really neat resources, which the Veterans History Program is part of. Historical Resources has a lot of museums and also information about historical markers, other things that can relate to libraries. So very helpful. Um, then I took scholarly communication class. This gave me a solid foundation in issues of academic scholarship and technology. So those of you in academic libraries or interested in that type of path. But as a result of this knowledge, really what I honed in on was copyright and doing a copyright project. So again, for that statewide platform that we're working on, I worked on what does our copyright statement look like? How are we going to evaluate what items are going to be put on um, to the repository so that can make sure we're following copyright. So understanding kind of like rights statement, Creative Commons, public domain, evaluating these resources and resources that need to be sent to directors and making sure we understand the copyright selection of that. So that was that class. In the summer, I took research methods in library and information science, and then I also took collection development and maintenance. And these were two of the core classes at USF, and I think are probably familiar to people most of the time in grad school. You have to take a research class, and then also collection development is a pretty popular course. In research methods, there was actually a lot more data collection and analysis, and that's a big part of what we do at the division. We actually have a whole program based around it. If you're interested, we have some really cool data tables in the data and statistics program. Um, in the survey I'm putting out right now, it helped me think through the survey process because I had to do that as part of it as well. The ethics of making sure we present that information well. Also, we all do a lot of things with grants here in the division. We're grant funded, some of our positions. And so being able to understand kind of that, while not exactly the same as research, a similar process of kind of filling out an application, making sure that you are including important information and resources that are legitimate for research purposes. Collection development and maintenance. In my current role with directors have to abide by their own collection development policies. It introduced me to the different types of development and maintenance in a variety of libraries, like policies, acquisitions, evaluation. Not only am I more familiar with what public library directors have to deal with, but when you're creating a digital library, you have to go through and also create separate policies for that, especially if it's going to be very different from your print collection. And then policies for things like displays, understanding your community was very comprehensive because it was not just about this is how we do collections, but this is how we understand our community so we can better develop our collections for them. I also took rare books and special collections, and honestly, that's just a super fun class. It showed you, even though it was online, you got to explore a lot of online exhibits and special collections. I got to look at some neat special collections, which was beneficial for looking at digital libraries. Since digital libraries are often, uh, you know, categorized as special, it also introduced me to the world of special libraries and special collections, and we have quite a few in Florida. And then in my last semester, I took three courses, the history of libraries, digital libraries, and then foundations of information science and technology. Foundations of Information Science and Technology was kind of a course where, yes, you focus on the information science part, but a little more focused on the technology side. So I kind of wrote about embedded librarianship using learning management systems. I specifically focused on Canvas, but in my director connections role, I'm responsible for our learning management system, teaching people how to use it. Understanding that side of the technology aspect is very helpful. I think especially academic librarians dealing with a lot of different technologies and what, current undergraduate students or graduate students are dealing with is a pretty comprehensive class. Digital libraries, it's actually very funny. I was not imagining that I would do work in digital libraries. And then that class ended up being extremely helpful when I worked in the statewide digital initiative. Knowing what we got hands-on experience in Omeka, which is a type of digital library system that's used, and doing some cataloging as part of that class. I did that all the time in my digital initiative role, and I didn't really even expect to use that. So I think it just shows that even maybe some of the elective classes that you end up taking or needing to kind of fill in, you can really end up applying for your future work. And then history of libraries, also a very fun class, but really understanding the development of the library field and some even historical library buildings, such as the development of Carnegie libraries and our history of that. It sparked my interest in having a joy to learn about library buildings, but also libraries around the state. So in my current job, when I hear of a new director, I get to learn about that library, research it, connect it to its greater history of the work that libraries are doing, and honestly just be inspired. So that's very exciting. So that's kind of a broad overview and reflection on how each of these courses I've used in my everyday roles in the division over the last year. I think that also continuing to keep those skills sharp after graduating is important. With that, I'm going to plug our continuing education program here at the division. You can look at webinars, adult learning, other resources that will help you during and after your library degree. Also, for any directors that are out there wanting to get their staff more information, I also encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you, Rebecca. I see she put continuing education in the chat. I also encourage you to subscribe to our BLD newsletter. You can find out what's happening in my program and also a lot of other programs. And I think Rebecca's going to put that in a chat too. So that's kind of my broad overview. I did notice that when we had registration for this webinar that someone had a question about, are there any remote kinds of positions? So that's a great question. I wanted to offer some resources, which I think Rebecca's going to put in the chat. Thank you, Rebecca. She's great. She's our stellar administrative assistant for all things continuing education. Uh, I would recommend looking at some various job boards and resources, which again, I'll put in the chat. But most of the time, I just find that you have to look at the job description itself. Some job sites have the ability to filter by job type and if it's remote, others don't. But if anybody else has any resources or recommendations for remote jobs, please feel free to share. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I know USF has a really good weekly, I think it's weekly email that they send out. I get it just to see what's happening in the library world with weekly job openings. FSU has a job board. There's also Florida Library Jobs that I wanted to shout out there as well. And then lastly, we have professional resources for libraries from the State Library of Florida. We have a specifically curated collection for librarians and libraries of books and ebooks that are related to either stuff that could help you currently in your degree or just for continuing education and learning. Now, I will tell you that actually, when I was in my MLIS program, one of the books they had here at the state library that I couldn't get at USF. So it was actually super beneficial and also lots of different types of things that you can do, such as articles, looking up information on that for any of the supplemental stuff you might be doing during your degree. So just want to plug that out there because it was very helpful for me. So with that, I'd love to hear from any of you. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. Oh, actually, no, I'm not because Rebecca was so fast. Thank you, Rebecca. I would love to hear from you all um, about your experience, either, how maybe you've connected some of your courses, even just hearing me chat about it. But that's it for my part of this discussion. And so now we have about 30 minutes for you all to discuss, or if you have any questions. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share, and I'd love to hear from you all. And also, feel free to come off mute or put any questions in the chat.
Um, Jennifer, I'm Jinfang Niu.
Hi, Dr. Liu.
I'm very glad to hear your webinar here. So I believe our faculty will be very happy to hear you like our courses and you learn something very valuable for your job. So please do share the recording, the link to the recording with me. I will share with my faculty, and also the links and the resources, including the continuing education resources. That's very helpful for our students also. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Yes, I meant to say, so this is being recorded. We will eventually put it up on our YouTube channel, which is kind of working as our learning management system right now for anybody to access. And then anybody who registered for this webinar, even if they weren't here, they'll get the links to
Okay,
what
great.
all that we've talked about in this webinar today.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions or just thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello. Um,
Hello.
and it's interesting you mentioned about whether you use the material that you're learning in school. I'm still in school. I'm in my second semester. And some of the staff here have told me, yeah, nothing that you learn in school is actually what you do in the library. However, that sort of can be true, I suppose, but still it's it's nice to flesh out the subject and get a feel for all the different aspects of it. So I'm finding it useful, but if not immediately useful day to day. And I thank you for sharing your thoughts with me about that as well. I appreciate it. So that's all.
No, yeah, thank you so much for that, Donald. I think you have a good point on that. There's some things that aren't going to be immediately apparent, but if you know kind of the background of it, and then getting the chance to kind of use it more hands-on is where I think it really connects. And so in some of my classes, there were practical assignments we had to do. I had the benefit of when I was going through the program too, that I was working in a library, and so I could use my kind of assignments for stuff I was doing for my current role. Honestly, I highly, or even if you're not, currently in a library, working in a library, maybe that's something you want to do, kind of using those assignments for the role that you want.
Hmm.
And I also have just ended up in places I didn't really expect. To be in, but applying what I've learned and kind of crafting that has been very helpful. And it's so hard because libraries, schools, and libraries in general are just so broad, right? And so
Yes.
you could totally take a class on a topic and maybe it would never apply. But then I took a class on a topic I wasn't sure I'd end up working towards, like with that digital libraries class, and then that ended up being a huge part of the last year of my work.
There
So,
you go.
I also think it helped. I saved a lot of my assignments and my information, and sometimes I look back on that and reflect it. So if you have the opportunity to kind of save some of the things you've written, you can kind of look back and be like, oh yes, that was really helpful.
That's true. I know one thing that working in a library really makes it easier to comprehend the assignments. It definitely gives you a leg up. So
Yeah, definitely. I know. Are you, Donald, if you don't mind me asking, what program are you in or what are you doing right
I'm
now?
in, well, I work at a public library.
Okay.
I'm at University of South Florida, MLIS program.
Okay,
And
great.
and well, I'm thinking about taking some electives on archiving and things like that because I like the public library, but you know, want to broaden my appeal a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I know archives is definitely a very popular kind of supplemental thing that a lot of people in library degrees do. Um, I know, I think that I saw Kayla on here, but uh, at SSDN, I know they're connected a bit with Society of Florida Archivists. I didn't know, Kayla, if you wanted to talk a little bit about your accidental archivist training.
Sure. Thanks. Hi. Yeah, so um, a lot of people fall into job responsibilities that they were not expecting to take on and don't have the proper training for. Um, it happens a lot at smaller institutions in particular, where you're kind of doing more than one job at a time. So one of the things that we recognize is that a lot of local libraries become de facto repositories for their community history, and librarians don't generally get archival training. And while they're very adjacent fields and there is some overlap, there are differences in the way that archives are treated to library materials, both in the way that they are processed, the way that they're described, the way that they are accessed and the way that they're stored. So the accidental archivist training came about because I work with digital libraries a lot, and we were talking to people about, getting their collections ready to go online to be digitized, and a lot of them like, I have a room, I don't know what to do with all these boxes or this filing cabinet, and this recognition that, oh, we need to take a step back. They're not ready to digitize, they need to get a handle on the physical items first. So in that workshop, it's a day-long workshop. If Obviously, archivists have years and years of training. They also have specialist tracks for archival training. So we're not going to be able to cover everything, but we try in this day to cover the basics of archives training. So we talk about the paperwork that you should have on hand, like forms for people when they drop stuff off, so that you have some sort of provenance or way to contact somebody back if you have more questions about the items or if you want to give the items back. Um, uh, uh, Processing like inventory sheets, collection development policies, so that you can say no, so you don't become like a trash bin either, Um, uh, you know, trying to give people a better understanding so it doesn't feel so overwhelming, so that they have these things that they can fall back on, so that they have policies, they have some of that basic idea of where to start. Um, and then we also offer consultations when people have specific questions. Um, Jennifer mentioned copyright, and copyright is a major part too when it comes to archives and digital collections. There's a lot of complications and layers when it comes to intellectual property. So, and we don't expect everyone to know all the ins and outs of that. So we try to be a reference too, so that it doesn't feel like they're on their own after the workshop either. It's not like, here you go, you're on your own again. That they can come back and talk to people who do it more regularly and have more specific expertise in those areas. Is that what you were looking for, Jennifer?
No, it was great. Yeah, thank you, Kayla. I think it just shows too that even if maybe during your coursework there might be limited opportunities or um areas that like you can't take an official course in, if you supplement with other resources or organizations that are available, that's when we can do it. And I did want to address Amanda's question in the chat. So I see she said, how would we develop opportunities to utilize those skills, like using my assignments for my current job as well? And currently in semester 5 of 6 at FSU. Congrats. Um, I would say that sometimes it's kind of looking for those opportunities, not even just in your current job type, but also maybe with other organizations, either volunteering. We just heard from Kayla and what she does with SSDN. If you know about your different organizations that your library partners with, you can utilize those skills. I think also just taking the opportunity in your current work, if there's, the skill relates to some type of emerging technologies, kind of taking that almost risk and using some type of new technology so that you can develop that as well. Or if, there's a certain work group or some type of supplemental committee that you know that you're interested in and how you want to craft your stuff, or your future career, looking at that opportunity, and saying, hey, this is how I can contribute. This is what I'm interested in. In my current position, I will say that there's a good amount of flexibility on how I get things done, as long as I get things done. And so I have the opportunity to kind of utilize some of those skills. Some skills are going to be really specific, such as, if you're a manager, you're going to like be utilizing maybe those management skills a little more. But leadership is kind of something that anybody can take on depending on their role. So Amanda, if you wanted a little more context with that, hopefully that's helpful, but feel free to share more in the chat if you had more questions on that. Um, and Dr. New, I saw that you came off of the mute, so I just wanted to make sure. Did you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I want to share something I know about archives because my specialization is in archives. So, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistic data, during the time period from 2023 to 2033, the 10-year period of time, the librarian jobs will grow by 3%. The average growth rate for all jobs across in the whole country is 4%. So
Mm.
the growth of librarian jobs is lower than the national average, but the growth of archivists and the curators will be 11%, which
Mm.
is way faster than the national average. So if you're interested in archives, you made a good choice. And that's what I want to say. That's it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the division has a lot of resources too, since we do hold the state archives. And so I encourage you to kind of check out the division, those links. Um, and yeah, I think that I've heard that's kind of a lot of chatter I've heard recently too, is a lot of librarians kind of trying to dive into that part of the field as well, because it is needed and it's going to be growing. Um, And let me just check the chat, make sure I'm not missing anybody. Okay, great. I'm glad that was helpful to you, Amanda. Priscilla says, I work at Pasco County Libraries. I'm currently a student in the MLIS program at USF. Woohoo! Second semester. All right. This presentation. Oh, I'm glad it's helpful for you. Yes, please share this information with your coworkers who are entering the program in the fall. That's wonderful. Yeah, definitely. So any other questions or thoughts? I know we've talked about archives, talked about kind of how you can leverage and apply, develop those skills. Another thing I did want to mention too is opportunities to utilize those skills along that line too. I know USF has the opportunity to do an internship that can be part of your degree if you would like to. I didn't end up doing that because I worked in a library, like I said, but I know that that can be very helpful. I know that I would have to dig to find this information, but I know at the archives, I believe that there's an internship that you can go through. We can probably find that information later and send that out. But that's also, an option. Sometimes they're remote, sometimes they're in person. But that's always a great way to utilize your skills. And even if you don't have that job, that dream job yet or whatever, but uh, just working on it as you go. Any other thoughts, questions?
So regarding the opportunities to apply knowledge you learn from school, so I'm not sure if the student Amanda is talking about the skills in library related to library or related to archives. But if you are talking about the knowledge you learn related to archives from school, so I have some ideas because in my class, I asked my students to apply their knowledge to, the knowledge about the archives and records management to their family archives and the archives of their employers, records and archives of employers. Students do assignments through my class. In the assignment, they create the records retention schedules, and then the preservation planning, etc. Those assignment, they use their family archives and the employers of their the records and archives of their employers. I think that's a good opportunity. So even if you don't have like an internship or volunteer opportunity, you can still do that. And also I encourage students to connect with some libraries and especially archives library that badly need help, like some volunteer-based organizations, they need student help, many of them. So even if they are not, they don't pay you, but getting some experience, working with some real archival collections can be helpful. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Dr. New. And also, I'm going to throw in the chat the Society of Florida Archivists. Um, they have a job and internships in Florida archives, libraries, and museums resource too, because I know there's a lot of collaboration and overlap between those roles. And if you take a course path similar to mine that had a lot of different um, overlap with that might be something that would interest you too, because you can do a lot of different pivoting. I'm curious, is there anybody here that it's been a long time since you've done your master's in library science? Um, and what kind of your thoughts on maybe hearing from my experience how maybe library degrees have kind of changed since it was only 2 years ago that I did mine, but I'm just curious if maybe anybody who's done theirs like 10 years ago, have you heard any differences from my experience versus yours? And I know not everybody can come off the chat or come off the mic, but feel free to come off the mic or also put in the chat if you have any thoughts. I know we might have some people typing and stuff.
Wait, um, yeah, I guess it's been more than 10 years since I got my degree. Thanks for making me feel old.
Oh, no, sorry,
Um,
Kayla. That's not what I meant. I meant in the best way. You all are, very important.
um, but I mean, my experience is similar to what the previous person commented that like I learned a lot of my job on my job. I it wasn't a I like yeah, the foundational stuff was important. And I think my degree is valuable, but a lot of I was planning to work in digital collections. I do work with digital collections in a way, but it's a very different way than I was expecting to. And I do a lot more public facing things and more like training related things than I thought I would. And I had to learn all of that on the job. So, but one thing that I will say about library school that is true to life is all those group projects because you will live on committees in libraries. So group projects, just you got to learn how to work with other people.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kayla, and I meant to say that. Yeah, I see Chelsea in the chat. Oh my goodness, yes, group projects are helpful. Yeah, that was especially my research class, we did kind of a big group project with that. But what's interesting being in this field is that what first interested me in libraries was I mentioned I worked in public libraries and circulation. And I'm actually an extrovert, if you can't tell by my talking. But I actually loved the people aspect and working with people aspect. But then I found when I, entered my degree that I was one of the kind of few extroverts. So I think that just being aware that, yeah, you will be on a lot of different committees that group project working with people, especially, in my role as government, my job is to serve you all. The Bureau of Library Development's little motto is if you work for a library, a Florida library, we work for you. And so, even if that's not like your favorite thing to do in the world, having that skill, and I think increasingly in our world with a lot of technology and where we have just this massive amount of information, our job is really to help kind of filter that out for people and to help to engage in that people aspect too. That's sometimes can be a little harder to do when I know that degree programs are, a lot of them are completely online, or even if they're online and we have the opportunity to chat like it's still a good skill to know how to kind of work in that group setting. So that's just a little 2 cents there. Thank you, Kayla, for sharing that. So we have about, let's see, 13 minutes left, and I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions or comments, that we make sure this is for you all to kind of explore the division, explore, what this is looking like. So if you want to share anything, we're happy to be here. Well, I'm curious, since I'm not seeing or hearing anything in the chat. It sounds like we have a pretty good varied group of people at USF or who graduate from FSU. Did anybody do a library program outside of Florida?
Hmm.
Tanya, you did? I hope I'm saying that right. Your name right. What program did you do?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to do the. Yes, I went to Kent State.
Okay, Kent State. Okay, I
Yeah.
see Brock, UIUC. You will have to remind me what that stands for. Uh,
Illinois.
Illinois. Okay, that's what I thought, but
University
I
of
wasn't
Illinois,
sure.
Urbana-Champaign.
Okay. And then Talisha, I see San Jose State. Nice. William, graduated from LSU. Oh, congratulations on just graduating. Um, did any of you find my kind of journey or the other ones, people that have spoken about FSU? Were there any kind of like special courses or different things that you got to do in your degree um, that were maybe different from mine? Just curious.
I got a phone call partially into your talk, so I'll have to apologize.
Oh no, you're fine. You're
Uh,
fine.
but something that was a little bit unique at U of I, they only have two required courses.
Hmm.
One of them would have been similar to what you mentioned with a general information, what is it, class, and the other one was more of a
Technology.
capstone. And everything else you kind of build your curriculum around. I fully intended to be a rare books librarian, so my journey was a little bit different, but the we were able to do research and take graduate or PhD level courses in the master's degree. So I had an independent study that was all research, another one that was a PhD level course that was very interesting at that point in my life. Um, but I think you mentioned you took an administration course.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had one of those that our advisors told us that you should always take one or two classes that are out of the zone that you think you're going to work in. And so it was public library administration. And it was taught by an adjunct professor who had been library director all these different places over the years, past president several times over of the Illinois Library Association. And she was just phenomenal and mentored so many students who became directors early in their career. And that's the class that put me on the path that I got on. So it's and between that and one other class, which was in marketing, were the only two that I really used every day of my job until recently. So every program is different. So
Yeah, thank you, Brock. That's I think that's some really cool advice about, you know, looking at a couple courses that might not be what you're expecting to take because you just never know. And library marketing, man, that'd be great. Yeah.
that
I
was a
could,
fun class.
yeah, that'd be fun. And also, I mean, I know public libraries do a lot of that
Yeah,
type of stuff, so that's great. And the I believe USF I know at least offered a if you wanted to, you could do some type of directed individual study. That was something I explored. I just didn't with my course load and things, I didn't end up doing it. But that can be really great, especially if there's, you are wanting to go on to that PhD work or you're wanting to kind of do more in-depth research on a particular topic, get a lot of resources. I see Talisha in the chat said, I did an online internship where we had to assist our professor with developing a science library in Rwanda. She went there and we were virtual and we worked with a Gobi representative. Wow, what a cool opportunity. Yeah, especially oh, Fulbright scholar. She was a Fulbright scholar. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there's just such neat stuff that like only in library school, right? Like with the professor developing stuff and being able to do that. Do you have you ended up kind of what was your like biggest takeaway, Talisha, with that? Like, do you feel like it was just a really neat opportunity? Did you incorporate any of that type of stuff in your current work? Yeah, in a science library too, that would have a lot of particular things. There's just so many different types of libraries. I was responsible for collection development, and now that's part of my job, managing a collection. Well, there you go. That's great. Well, thank you both for sharing that. Um, just really neat to hear too. Tanya, I see in the chat, my experience was similar to yours. I was working in a public library while I was in school. We did have required courses and electives. However, we were able to choose from different pathways. Yeah, so I actually started in circulation. Then I actually moved into that theological library while I was in school. And four of those classes I talked about were required, the foundations, the administration, organization knowledge, and then the collection development. And USF does have also some different pathways. I was kind of in an interesting, different type of library. So I kind of focused more on academic, but then took a lot of those cultural heritage classes. So Tanya, did you end up doing like a pathway in public libraries, or did you end up kind of doing something a little different?
I,
Hey.
yes, but I did something a little different. So my pathway focused more on school librarianship, and then I got really interested in library management and public library management, and so now I'm a library manager. However, when I was in school, I thought I would stay with the school library kind of thing because I was working with teens and children, and I really enjoyed that. And I was actually writing programs for the system for some of our school age programs. And it just, I, I don't know, I got interested in so much. You know, I took a lot of electives in collection development and management, and then it turned in a whole different direction from what I intended.
Yeah, well, and that's okay, you know. I think that's what's so neat about this field is that we kind of all end up in different places, but recognizing like how, especially working with youth, I mean, I just feel like you can apply that to so many different things because if you can
Absolutely.
talk with a kid or a teenager, you can talk to anybody. I never got
That
to
is
really
true.
work too much with youth or teens in my library roles, but I have in other roles with other nonprofits, and so that's really come in helpful. But that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, it looks like we have about 3 minutes left. So th this is now is the time. This is the time. If you have any burning questions on your heart, before we kind of wrap up, just want to make sure anybody had any questions. Oh, and thank you. I see Rebecca just put in our chat, the BLD post-webinar survey. This is just a survey. Let us know how we're doing, how these, webinars have been helpful. Any feedback you can give us, we'd love for you to fill that out. Um, so right there in the chat. And like I said, this is being recorded, so we will eventually get this recording up on YouTube. And then also the chat log from today will be sent out to everybody who registered. So all those good links and resources will be available for you to peruse after. So I'm happy to stay on for the next couple minutes, but feel free if you have any questions. Thank you, Tanya. I'm glad this was interesting and that you enjoyed it. I'm glad you were on today. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Micah. Glad you were able to join. Thank you, William. Oh, great. Kitty, thank you. Glad you'll share the recording. Yes, please. Thanks, Donald. Appreciate it.